All right, this is John Wood, and I'm coming to you from East Rosebud Fly Shop in Billings, Montana, where it's cold as bejesus outside, but I am thinking about spring and summer when it's a little warmer. So this fly I'm going to do here in this video is called the DQ Hopper. The story behind that is I tied a version of this during a fly tying contest and got disqualified with it. It was hurt so bad that I went home and worked on it for 2 weeks to perfect it. It's a really good, it's easy to see, and it floats like a cork. So I'm going to show you the prep that I do for this before we get started, because there's quite a bit of prep in the materials. I'm going to use 2 different sizes of the Chernobyl tapered cutter to cut out the body pieces. The bottom, the belly is yellow, and the back is olive on this particular version, and you can change that to whatever color you want. And then we're going to use Rainey's float foam, size small. That will be our eyes, and I'm going to cut those in about 3/8 inch long pieces, just a little bit wider than our medium size width on our body pieces. And then we're going to use for the legs, I do a little tying ahead of time to tie the feet. And I'm going to use this, which is medium round rubber legs from Hareline. And you can do them in whatever color you want. This is the golden stone. I like the way it matches the olive. Peel off 2 of those legs. And then I want to tie in each end the feet about a 1/2 inch from the end. You don't have to get too critical with that, but just make a loop, cinch it in there really tight, and these stay very well when you're fishing it. I haven't had any trouble with them coming untied as long as I get them good and cinched. If you leave them loose like that, they'll pop open, but just give them a good cinch and they'll stay there. And then I want to take that and pop it so those 2 ends separate. And that'll be something I'll tell you about here when we get to setting those legs. The other thing is I'm going to stack some yellow deer hair. And I've already done that so you don't have to listen to me tapping on the table. And I believe that's all of the prep. So I'm going to tie this on a Firehole 839, which is a barbless hook. And obviously, if you want to use a dropper off of your hoppers, you'll want to use a barbed hook, and the size 8 TMCO 100 works perfectly. Here we go. Now I'm going to start with the belly, and I want to get it on the hook before I do anything else. So I just set it the width of the gap, pop that through in the center, and go ahead and put it in the vise. Let me get that set just right. Before we start our thread, I want to flip this around, and I know you can't see this here, but you'll be able to see it in just a second. I've cut that so it is right at the eye of the hook, and where I went through the foam is right at the start of the bend of the hook. So we're going to start our thread a 6/0 yellow olive, and this is one of the few times I would ever encourage you to make a really rough, gnarly thread base from the eye all the way to the bend of the hook. And then I want to make a little bitty bump right there because we're going to slide up against it and then go right back up to the eye of the hook. I want to turn this over. And this is why we cut our foam in the beginning for the belly, and I'm going to lock it down just right behind the eye. One note, don't discard your cutoff because we're going to use that for the indicator. Now I'm going to visually cut this length between where it comes through the foam and the eye of the hook into 3 sections. Basically what that amounts to is halfway in between the point of the hook and the eye, and then that last third will be from the point of the hook to where it goes through the foam. And I'm going to take that and loop that over the foam on top, and I'll show you what I've done there. there's just one string of thread across there, and then make 3 or 4 really nice tight turns. Do that right at the point of the hook. Make your turns, and then come back to the back and make 3 or 4 turns of thread right there. Now I'm going to use just a drop of Loctite liquid super glue, and just put just a drop. You don't want to get too much because you'll stick your fingers to the fly. And I'm going to brush off the extra. Then I'm going to take my body cutout, which was done with the medium cutter, and lay it to where it's just a little bit longer than the yellow right there. And that super glue will hold it in place. And now you can look down on your vise and you set your thumbnail right where that thread is hanging in that crease, and bring it around 3 or 4 loops. Now we want to pull this back, and with a single loop come back up to the next segmentation and make it a wrap of thread, and do the same thing. Set your fingernail there as a guide, wrap that in there, and then get 3 or 4 wraps on both. We're going to repeat that one more time, and then our last one will go right up to the eye of the hook. And you notice I've got that right at the eye of the hook. We're going to catch that in there like that. Make our loops, and then we're going to do the same thing we did in the beginning and loop it backwards with just one loop right to that first segment. Now I'm going to take my dyed yellow deer body hair, and I like the body hair because it's got the variegation in it, and it really imitates the color of the underwing on a hopper. And I want to set that to where it's about 1/4 of an inch longer than the body. Bring your thread around 2 very loose loops. Don't put any pressure on them until you've got the second one done, and then pull upward. And what that does is it keeps from pulling the hair around the fly. It pulls it straight down onto the body. And then just give it 3 or 4 more wraps right there. You don't need to get fancy. And now with my left hand, I'm going to hold down the tips that we want to keep for the wing, and my right hand, I'm going to grab all that other, then pick up my scissors, and I can cut this, almost all of it, in one nice clean cut. Now we're going to set our legs, which I forgot to mention in the beginning. This is a 3 1/4 inch strip. You can cut it a little bit longer if you want, so you get longer front legs, but that's the measurement that I used. And got my feet tied in there, and I'm going to set this. You won't be able to see it on the back, but I always set these on the back first, where that knot is right at the back of the upper piece of the body. Lock that in place right on the side of the foam, right on the side of the olive, the top layer. Now I'm going to do the very same on the back. Line it up, that knot with the back of the body. Hold it in place. Give it some really good tight wraps. Now to set the eyes, I'm going to take and again put just one little drop of super glue right here on top of that front section. Not too much, because you'll end up with it going everywhere. If you do get a little bit, use your paper towel to dab it off. Now I'm going to center those eyes up right there and just set them right on top. Something I forgot to do here in the beginning is cut a little notch in my back, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Fold that over, keeping your wings contained between that notch. Hold that foam down in place and then take 2 or 3 really good tight wraps. Then we're going to come, and this is the piece that I cut off of the belly. I'm going to narrow it down just a little bit so that it's not quite as wide as it was, and then catch that right on top with a couple good thread wraps. Make sure it's in place, and use my whip finisher and reach over that. Now all we've got to do is a bunch of trimming. I'm going to cut these to length, and you can cut these however short or long you want them. It does not matter. It's all personal preference. It's up on top and the fish aren't going to see it. Now I'm going to come in here and I'll turn it this way so you can see. I'm going to lay my scissors right against the piece that's used for the belly and just cut that off. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And just cut that off. Now I'm going to cut off one of the strands on that last section, and then for the front legs, just pull that nice and tight, cut it, and they pop apart. And there you have the DQ hopper.